Hello and welcome to this video where we will create this small project where we have a button, and when we click on it we will actually roll a pair of dices, and as you can see, if we hit the same number on both dices it will also display a little message. We are going to do it in a Blazor server app with .NET 6, and it will be a good project to get more familiar with Blazor. So as you can see, if I click again we get 2 new dices and again. So let's go and open a new Blazor server app project. So we will right click the icon for Visual Studio and just click Visual Studio 2022, and from in here we want to create a new project. We want to create a Blazor server app and say next, and we could just call it Dice Rolling App, and then we say next. So we'll just choose .NET 6 and we say create. So the only page we have to edit is actually inside the pages folder, and then it's the index, so it is the front page of our Blazor server app. So the first thing is we can go and delete all this HTML, and then we can go and rename the page title to Dice Rolling App. So the first thing we want to have here is a button where we can say try your luck, and then because we have Bootstrap available to make it look a little bit better, we can go and add some classes to this button, and the first class is just to tell it that it is a button, and the next one is to say that we want to use the button success class. So this will just make it green. I do then want to add some line breaks here, and then we should display the 2 images, which is the dices. So I will actually create a image folder, so we can say img and then slash and then dice, and just to write something I will say dice1, so that will just be the dice that will show 1 dot, and we will say .jpeg, and then we will actually just go and say Ctrl D to duplicate this line. So now we have 2 dices that will be shown when we have created our image folder, and we also put the images inside. We will then also have a variable that I just called a pair, and this will actually just be a bool, and we of course also need to say if. So if it is a pair, then we want to display this headline 1 where it says whoa a pair, and as you can see with the variable a pair it have a red underline, and that's of course because we have not created this variable yet. So we will go and create our code section where we want to create this variable, and I do want to create a public variable that is a bool, and we just call it a pair, and to start with it will just be false because we haven't thrown the dices yet. We then want to go and create a variable for each dice. So again I make them both public. This will be an integer, and we will call the first one for dice 1 and the second one for dice 2. So these will just be the variables that keep track of what the value is of the dice. So it can only go from 1 to 6, but we will just start saying that they are 1 each. So when we throw a dice, we get a new value in here. Right now it will just start as 1. We want to create a method that is going to change the value of each dice every time we click the button. But we also want to display this value that, for example, dice 1 have. We want to display it inside the image here, because right now we would just have dice 1, so the dice where we only display the number 1, but we want to make that dynamic. So what we want to do is to make an @ sign and then some parentheses, and inside this parentheses we want to display the value of this variable. So because we don't change this value at any time right now, it will just display 1, so it will actually just be exactly the same as down here right now. But the second dice here, we want to display the dice number 2 and the value that that have, so we can just go and copy this and put it over the number 1 here, and then it's not dice 1 but dice 2. So just to test this, we will go and run the application, but first we want to create the image folder where we put the images inside, and I have a link in the description where you can just go in and take the dices. So it is in this article, you can just go in and take the dices that is at the bottom. We also have all the code in here, so you don't have to sit and type it, but down here we have the 6 dices, and we can just go and say save as, and go and save them into your computer. But the first thing I will do is just go and actually create the image folder. So it's inside this www root folder that we want to right click and say add, and we want to add a new folder called img for images, and then we can actually go and just right click this folder and say open folder in File Explorer. Because when we do that, we can go and take the path here. So you can just go and copy the path, and then we can go back and say that we want to save these images into the folder and then hit enter. So now we are actually inside the folder that we just created, and I already named the dices dice 1, dice 2, dice 3 and up to 6. So we can just go and save it, and I'll just do it with the rest of the dices here. So now I put all the dices inside the image folder here. We can see we have dice 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And now we can actually go and try to run the application to see how it looks. So now we actually have the look of the dices ready. Of course, we have no functionality yet. That is what we're going to create now. So just go and close the application again. So what we will do now is to go and create a method. This is going to be a public method that will be async, and it will return a task, and we will call it for roll the dices. So now we have to find out what should happen when we roll the dices, and it should of course be these two variables that would actually just get a random number between 1 and 6. So to do that, we can go and take the random class and make a new instance of this random class, because we can save it inside a variable. In this case, I just call it rand. And the way that we can say that we want to have a value between 1 and 6 is actually just by saying that our dice 1 should be equal to the value that this is going to return. So we take our random class here, and we can say next, and to get a value between 1 and 6, we actually have to say 1, 7. And the reason we want to say 7 and not 6 is because if we read the information that we get here, then it says that the range of return values includes minimum values. So we will get 1 if we start with the minimum value of 1, but not the max value. So we will never get 7 in this case. We can then just go and say Control D to duplicate this, because we want to do the exact same with the second dice. So it should actually work now with this roll the dices. The only thing we need is to actually make an on-click event listener up here at the bottom. So we can say the add sign, and then we say on click. And when we click the button, we want to run this roll the dices method. So you just go and copy paste that in. So right now this should work. We do not have this check yet for the pair, but let's just go and test this. And let's click the button here. And now you can see we actually roll the dices. So let's close the application again, and let's make this a pair check. So it's actually a pretty simple if else statement, because if the dice 1 is equal to the dice 2, then a pair will be true because it is a pair. And then else we just want to set the a pair to false, because then it's not a pair. If they're not equal to each other, then they are not a pair. So let's try to run the application, and let's roll the dices, and we already get a pair here. So let's try to roll it again, and now you can see it will set the a pair to false, because now we don't have a pair, and else we just set it to a pair. So that was actually it for this rolling dices video, and I hope you learned something and also got a little bit more familiar with Blazor and how easy it actually is to use. And else just have a nice day. Bye.